Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome to a national perspective on global energy panel part 2 discussion at the 36th annual BEYA Global Competitive Conference. Thank you so much for joining us today. The time is now 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and our virtual session is scheduled for an hour and 15 minutes, where the last 10 to 15 minutes we'll schedule or keep reserved for questions. My name is Nana Johnson, and I am a two-time Morgan State University graduate, where I earned my BS in engineering physics in 2008 and my ME in electrical engineering in 2010. As a freshman at Morgan State in 2004, I was introduced to the importance of BEYA and attending BEYA. So upon graduation in 2010, I was offered a job with the Department of Defense as a U.S. Army civilian. Since then, I've remained in federal service for 12 years, currently working for the Secretary of the Air Force in the Pentagon. I am a proud BEYA Stars and Stripes volunteer and the military government track session lead for today's panel discussion. Before we begin, I would like to share with you some quick administrative pointers to enhance your BEYA experience. If you're interested in continuing education points or continuing education units, or professional development hours, credits, please click the link in the seminar to apply for CEUs or PDH credits. You may rate this seminar and the panel in the conference app by selecting the session topic and then quote unquote rate. Your feedback is so important for us to help plan next year's conference and the conferences of the future. Another quick reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please put your questions and comments in the chat and we'll filter through them when we get to that segment of our panel discussion. We absolutely encourage everybody to stay abreast on all the current BEYA happenings on news, on social media, on Twitter at BEYA Technology, on Facebook at BEYA STEM, and also to stay in touch with your conference friends using the BEYA app. Lastly, we would like to remind you that the session is being recorded. So I encourage you to please mute your mic when you're not speaking. So as you can see today, we are super fortunate to have two senior leaders, one from the Department of Energy and the other from Solar Stewards. These women are extremely well-versed in the subject matter and are very excited to share with you their knowledge today. But before we begin our panel discussion, I would like to introduce to you all the moderator, Colonel Al Trimble. He is a Morehouse College graduate where he earned his BS in physics. Go physics. He is a Marine veteran who deployed and has been all over the world to numerous, and also has held numerous leadership assignments as an operations logistician, strategic planner, staff officer, and believes mission first, people always. He commanded the Marine Corps' largest logistics base and naval aviation maintenance training school for the CH-46, CH-53, and MV-22 maintenance personnel. Throughout his career, he worked diligently to mentor others and to build resilience and sustainability into organizations. He's appeared weekly on the Washington, D.C. news show, Government Matters, been a panelist for Georgia Chamber of Commerce, Rural Economic Development Summit, the BEYA Technology panel presenter, both at Georgia Clean Energy Roundtable and Energy Blockchain Consortium. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce this amazing planner to you all this afternoon, as we will allow our two panelists to introduce themselves once Colonel Trimble gives you his welcome greeting. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Nina, for that introduction. That was fantastic. Mo, can I ask you to start the timer? Because if you don't start that timer, I tell you, the topic that these two ladies are going to talk on today, we are going to go over. So I'd like to try to keep it in the box. Like Nina said, we have two amazing leaders today that I want to talk to you about. But just a little bit of background on BEYA and this, our panel on energy, our global perspective on national energy. This is our second installment. Our first installment focused on climate change and the intersection of energy and the associated STEM fields that were related to both climate change and energy as we understand it. But we'd like to further that discussion. Today, the focus is a lot that we hear a lot today is about AI and data sciences. And so we have that. But also there's a strong component for entrepreneurship and growth and social justice and equality. And so when we bring those those topics together, we hope that you'll find some enlightenment and some understanding of the opportunities that exist and a better feel for those particular entities as well. So first up, without further ado, I'm going to introduce my first guest panel, Ms. Dana Redding. Ms. Dana Redding is the president and CEO of Solar Stewards. She's also the co-founder of a policy group called Black Owners of Solar Services. And she is a strong advocate for equity, justice, and equality. Mo, I'm looking at my screen. I don't look like I'm centered. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm good before we continue on. I'm good? We're good? Okay.
I'm sorry, tech support, it does appear that way, Colonel. I also was questioning whether or not he's in the panel or not. We apologize, everyone in the background. You know, that's a lot better. Now you're in the block.
Yeah,
you're in the block now.
Yeah, in the Marine Corps, we call that Kentucky windage. You know, you just kind of bend over a little bit and get it on target, all right? So get a little Kentucky windage and get us there. All right. But again,
and then too, if you can please show our slides, if you wouldn't mind, please changing the slide to Ms. Redden.
I just want to thank the organizers and my esteemed panelists. One thing that's really contributed to my career trajectory is, and I'm trying to not be Kentucky winded myself. There we go. Is, you know, surrounding yourself with more experienced, you know, smart people. And so that is reflected on this panel. I certainly am really grateful for this opportunity. And it's really one of those visualizations that I had in starting out an entrepreneurship career. I'm Dana Claire Redden, the founder of Solar Stewards, who are a social enterprise based in Atlanta, Georgia, where I sit now. And we focus on connecting the corporate social responsibility initiatives. You might hear that acronym CSR, corporate social responsibility, and corporate renewable energy procurement to opportunities for renewable energy in historically excluded communities. When I say historically excluded, I think that many tuning in already know what that means. That means BIPOC communities or Black, Indigenous, people of color. You know, the people of color would refer to Latinx as well. Obviously, Indigenous communities, coastal communities, low and moderate income communities. I'm originally from Appalachia. We consider that to be an economically, historically excluded community as well. So I really love that term because it does explain the focus of our program, which is to connect to those that have been left behind to the benefits of renewable energy, particularly what we'll talk about, distributed generation. So that's renewable energy that's generated close to the load, or, you know, the amount of energy that you use.
Can you put up our slide, please?
Yes. Happy to be here. I'd love to get into more of what we do. Colonel, would you like me to go over this slide right now?
We'll save that. We'll save it for later. Let's get the director introduced, and then I'll come back to you, Dana. How's that?
Thank you.
And next up on my panel is Director Pamela Isom. She is the newly appointed Director of Artificial Intelligence at the Technology Office at the Department of Energy. Director Isom, the floor is yours.
First of all, let me say thanks for allowing me to be here. and talk to you all today. I sincerely appreciate it. And I tell you, these kinds of things are not things that I take for granted. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I am Pam Isom. I am the Director of the Artificial Intelligence and Technology Office at the department. It is quite the honor to serve in that role. And okay, here we go, Pam, with the. So it's quite the honor to serve in that role, and in that capacity. I sincerely appreciate it. I was appointed the director back in August of last year. And then I basically have been working with the team since that appointment to help us to understand and guide the organization towards responsible and trustworthy AI and the adoption and also the research and development of capabilities using AI to support energy, to support the grid, to support renewables and all of that. But our solutions have to be responsible. They have to be trustworthy. So we call ourselves the conscience of AI, and we call ourselves the innovative governance team for AI. Over to you.
Thank you, Director Isom. Now back to you, Dana. We'll let you talk a little bit more about what it is that you do, and kind of give us a sense of Solar Steward and your entrepreneurship.
Love to, thank you. If I could see my slide. This slide has a number of different graphs on it that really encompass, thank you, what we look at. So I think the real thread here for the opportunity and a little bit of the challenge as well is looking at new systemic models that can deliver more equity within our global systems, and particularly today, energy. One thing I love about what I do is I've always been an entrepreneur, even before getting into the energy space. And so I have the opportunity to really look into all facets of the globe, particularly business, because energy touches everybody. So that being said, you know, certain communities, as we see in this slide, environmental racism is nothing new, particularly with the fossil fuel industry. The toxic legacy of fossil fuels really has disproportionately burdened communities of color and historically excluded communities. And so with the transition to clean energy, we have more of an opportunity to address not only the climate crisis, and the warming of our planet and more extreme weather events, but we can also answer some of these, you know, remnants of systemic oppression through the deployment of renewable energy. Solar Stewards noticed that the business sector, and yes, I am biased as a business owner, but through a new lens of capitalism called stakeholder capitalism, recognizing that consumers and employees that are part of our global capitalistic system are demanding more equitable opportunities, whether that be through equal pay, whether that be through the siting of technologies, whether that be the opportunity to take part in business in a more equitable fashion. So fortunately, on a sustainability level, the multinational global corporations have really led on sustainability, at least in procuring their own renewable energy. And so we at Solar Stewards seek to leverage that by helping to connect them with opportunities for more localized renewable energy assets that are in historically excluded communities. So we're only one tool in the whole tool belt, but certainly an important one, because as they lead the way on climate, they can also lead the way on equity. And fortunately, again, with a new framework for equity in our global system, you know, thanks to those that really didn't choose to, but gave their life for a more equitable conversation. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, so many others were able to have this conversation that's in the public consciousness a little bit more. How can we deliver systemic change? And, as a segue, we're going to need AI in this revolution, and we need equitable AI. We've got to make sure that new technologies don't follow a legacy of inequity as other revolutions have. Thank you.
Oh, very awesome. Thank you. Great introduction, Dana. And again, every time I listen to you, I get fired up, man. I'm ready to go out and tear up the world. So let's get motivated. Director Isom, over to you for your introduction.
Yeah, so if you could bring up my slides, first of all, I'm gonna go over the vision. So the vision for my office is to transform the Department of Energy into a world-leading AI enterprise. And what we wanna do is accelerate the adoption, the research, the delivery, the demonstration, and the deployment of responsible and trustworthy AI. And what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit more about what that means, especially as we get into the Q&A portion. But I'm going to talk to you some about what that means now. So,
excuse me, Dr. Isom, could we bring up Dr. Isom's slide, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So think about my organization as a team that convenes. We can call a meeting in a heartbeat to say, let's tackle this issue. This is an issue that we see with the adoption and use of AI. We may see that there is an opportunity to create a task force that deals more with the ethical perspectives and make sure that we understand ethical practices of AI, which is something that we're doing. But we convene, we facilitate, we lead, we organize, and we advocate. So I work in the Department of Energy where we have practitioners, we have researchers, and these folks are sharp. And so it's not a good idea to come across as a team that wants to direct, and it's not a good idea. So our approach is to come across as one who convenes. We convene, we facilitate, we do lead, we organize, and we advocate. And so I think that's important for folks to understand, because when you want to drive change, you have to figure out the right way to go about it. And this is our approach. So one of the things that we do is we look at the life cycle of AI. So you think about in the energy space and the life cycle of batteries and the life cycle of energy. We believe in the life cycle of artificial intelligence. And we look at and study the life cycle and make sure that we're building in equitable principles throughout that entire life cycle. From the supply chain, the manufacturer of the AI components, the firmware, the software, the hardware, all the way to when those models are deployed, we need to be sure that we're paying attention to the deployment of the models, how the models are affecting society. So we call AI a socio-technical solution or socio-technical capability. And when you start to really infuse that ethical perspective, that's where the socio piece comes in. And as I said earlier, I call AI, and I call my team, the conscience of AI. So think about energy from the standpoint of autonomous operations, autonomous vehicles, energy distribution that's happening automatically. It's deciding where the energy should be distributed, and it's deciding how. Should it be solar? Should it be some other type of geothermal? So artificial intelligence is right in the mix of that. And the humans that are generating the algorithms are right in the mix of that. So that's where that's where we come in. So my team and the AITO office is there to help guide the right decisions and guide the development of the models that are going to make sure that the distribution is fair, that we're considering communities that we may not have thought of. So we're studying the patterns, and the AI is studying the patterns of and building the data based on information that it may not have thought of. right? Because we're trying to be there to make sure that there are no inherited biases. And sometimes when we talk about biases are not always intentional. The biases could be, I'm used to working in this type of environment, and so when I'm pulling my data sets together, it's going to be based on that. That is a cause for unintended consequences. Energy could get distributed. We could say energy gets distributed fair. We could think that energy gets distributed fairly, but maybe it doesn't take into account the costing and the economics for the different communities. You have to take into consideration the different factors like the economic conditions of communities, right? So that's what we do. I work with Justice 40 and making sure that our algorithms as we build them are in alignment with Justice 40, which we can get into a little bit later. And then you'll hear about digital twins. So with artificial intelligence, we can literally model communities. We can model a city, simulate a city, and then run scenarios against it to see, for instance, if there is a fire in Colorado, what is the impact of that fire in North Dakota, right? So you can run simulations to see kind of what before it happens. And where that's really important and where AI really matters is things like that, and projecting how the energy grid will be impacted in the event of a disaster. So that's a little bit about myself. There's more, but I am delighted to be here and just honored to work at the Department of Energy. It just seems like, you know, sometimes when you feel like it's the right time, I feel like it's the right time.
It is the right time. It is the right time. I got the two right leaders here to handle the right questions at the right time. Director Isom, that's awesome. I read, thanks for that wonderful introduction, and you as well, Dana. I read in the Fortune magazine, I read an article a few weeks back, and it really talked about some of the things that you do at the Department of Energy. And really, it talks about the intersection of energy and artificial intelligence. Could you kind of give the audience a taste of what it is that you do on a daily basis? I know you kind of just covered it a bit, but the article really breaks it down, as we call it, in elementary style, so some of us can understand it. Could you kind of talk to that a little bit?
I can give you an example of something that we're going through right now. So we are very focused on climate change and clean energy, and what can we do to drive clean energy across the nation, right? And even globally. And so right now, one person on my team has gotten involved with the subsurface area, and she's looking at how we can apply artificial intelligence, for instance, to understand how we can capture energy underground. Go underground, capture energy, store it so that it can be used. And in turn, that's going to cause the price of energy to go down because the storage is more accessible. And we call that carbon sequestration when you're trying to get the carbon underground so that it's not impacting the quality of energy. But we're also looking at how do we take, so carbon sequestration, we're also looking at like where in the underground, where are there opportunities to find energy sources, grab those energy sources, store the energy so that is readily accessible for electric vehicles, for the grid, for consumers. When we can do that, and we need AI to do that. So AI then comes along and runs models to say, this is a good land, or this is a good area for sequestration to get the carbon emissions out of the air, right? To get the carbon emissions, to stop that carbon from emitting, period. This is a good location. You can't do that. Humans can't do that. You cannot do that. It's not possible to go underground and figure these things out. AI can do it. The models can do that, right? Because of the computer visioning and things that are associated with AI. So that's an example of something that we're working with. And she's really excited to be a part of the team because she now is able to say, I'm helping to fulfill the mission. I'm helping to research and discover and understand what I need to do to help make a change in the world. And so that's an example of what I do. So my team, people on my team, we appoint them to work with stakeholders across the department to figure these types of things out and then help look at what type of AI solutions we want to bring to the table or technologies to make it real. So we do research and then we apply it. And then we're there also now, we'll be there to organize the teams and make sure we pull the right teams together. We'll be looking to make sure that as we are trying to figure out what areas are good for the sequestration, that we are not targeting certain areas, that we are building efficiency and equity in the models. Oh, we'll be looking, right? Because we're going to make sure we've got a diverse team involved. So we're going to be looking all over, not just certain areas, because that's one of the pain points, right? One of the pain points is certain areas are targeted for landfills, right? Things like that. So you want to make sure that what we do is we make sure that there is building efficiencies and that we are making sure that the teams that are involved are equitable and diverse. So we want diverse teams because that's how you make sure that things are equitable and fair.
One follow-up, Director. So when the data sets identify these areas for sequestration, is that an opportunity for entrepreneurship? And then, if so, how does that information get out? How does one find out about that information?
So anytime so it's kind of new territory. So yes, it's an opportunity for entrepreneurship. It's an opportunity for growth, for folks that are working and not familiar with that space. It's definitely an opportunity. The way that you find out is you're working with, people that specialize in that type of field. So people that specialize in understanding geology and understanding land and they have those types of experiences. So they understand that. They work in partnership with the technicians and the AI experts. So they work in partnership to help to understand and uncover where those opportunities are. And the capability is in the AI with the computer visioning. And then there's other skills that are required, but that's kind of how they would do it. Now the data sets themselves, you also want to include people on the teams that are not necessarily those folks that specialize in geological surface area studies and things, because you need that neutral perspective. So you want it all, right? You want to get as diverse as possible. And so then your data sets are now pretty diverse because you've got a mixture of teams. And then you run your scenarios against the data sets. And your data sets are going to continuously evolve, by the way, based on the information that you uncover. But that's kind of an example of how that would happen. And that is an opportunity for entrepreneurship.
All right, thank you. Back over to you, Dana. So you're an entrepreneur, you're in this space. Tell us a little bit about what you do and how does the process for you work? I know in your introduction, you talked about social recs or credits. Can you kind of dive into that a bit and kind of tell us about it?
Sure. So one thing that Solar Stewards is looking to really tackle is the inequitable adoption of solar energy, particularly rooftop solar or distributed generation. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, corporates do procure a lot of renewable energy, fortunately. However, they do so in large scale applications, utility scale, and so that distributed energy market has not been included within that spend. And particularly because there's still that disparity of solar deployment in historically excluded communities, they haven't been procuring their energy from those sites either. So Solar Stewards really has taken an existing framework for how these corporates procure their renewable energy, or a renewable energy credit. So you might see REC, or the acronym REC. I know this audience likes acronyms, so good. So RECs signify every megawatt hour of renewable energy that was generated is recognized with a credit or a certificate. Those two terms are interchangeable. So REC could stand for renewable energy credit or certificate. It's the same thing. In order to make sure that the marketplace is authentic and there's no double counting of these attributes, there are registries all over North America. Fortunately, now there's a registry that's international that's tracking these. And so it's a very reliable, lots of integrity within these systems, and they actually go back to the 90s. So nothing new about it. It's just we've taken the opportunity. Kentucky win. I love Kentucky. You know, I'm an Appalachian, so appreciate it. So we take that framework of renewable energy credits, and we have innovated within that framework to create an additional energy attribute category called a social renewable energy credit. And so this way corporates can know, okay, I'm procuring a lot of renewable energy. I might do it through a power purchase agreement. I might do it through renewable energy credits, but I can also do it with social renewable energy credits, or social RECs. And I'll know that those are procured from a historically excluded community. And so it might be a solar array on a coal community, which is, designated as a certain space by, several bodies. I think it's the EPA has a coal community, or a distressed city. I think that's a category through SBA. Lots of different categories that we already have to say, wow, this community could use a little more investment. And so we attached those designations and kind of flipped the script on them a little bit to say, well, they've been historically excluded, systemically oppressed in some cases. How can we utilize that for technological advancement or greater investment? So social RECs do command a price and a term that makes these projects move forward. Lots of things contribute to these projects being, more costly. So interconnection issues, the scale of these projects are typically on the smaller end. Again, we're talking about distributed generation. So you need a kind of an aggregate of a bunch of smaller sites as opposed to one big centralized opportunity. Financing has traditionally not been available for the deployment of these. And when it is, that capital cost maybe a little bit more. Now that's improved dramatically in the past 5 years. So that's a plus. But these projects need a little extra revenue to bring them to fruition, or, as we call in this renewable space, additionality, or, adding more renewables to the grid. So we're looking at ways that we can bring in that corporate partner who's already buying energy. We get to meet a number of their ESG, or I mentioned CSR goals, so corporate social responsibility, but also environmental social governance. That's another acronym that these corporates, particularly the investment world, uses, ESG. Great field to go into right now. So we're social RECs, corporate social responsibility, environmental social governments. We're still right there in the middle of that. But I love to bring it back to AI, because what you can imagine, you've got a whole bunch of different data points from these DERs, or distributed energy resources. We need that capability to know which ones are operating at full capacity at which times. Renewables is an intermittent energy source, so it's not a constant base load. It's going to up and down with the amount of irradiation that you get to to where you are on the globe. And so we really can use AI to help to juggle and monitor and include all of these DERs, or distributed energy resources. But not only that, we can use it, as Dr. Eisen was saying, to recognize that energy coming from, let's say, a historically excluded community may add more value in a lot of different ways to the grid, whether that's restorative justice, whether that's the fact that these communities we're addressing resiliency issues and health issues, disproportionate burden that they've had, so we can recognize procuring energy from them at a different value. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to bring in that additional partner. But more so, it's just a matter of getting these assets deployed and making sure they're smart, meaning, they're connected to the grid infrastructure and, have the value to create more resilient communities and even potentially be a revenue stream as we look at a more distributed grid from a national level.
Oh, thank you, Dana. You ladies are so fascinating. You just got my brain going here. So I want to change up our questions just a little bit, right? Because I think I'm going to combine them, because I'm going to ask you, Dana, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to the director. So how do you see the energy sector changing in the next 10 years or so? What transition strategy we need? And then what type of workforce is out there? So for the folks who are in the audience getting into the workforce, what should they be looking for, right? The changes in the energy world, how do we transition, and then how do we prepare ourselves for it?
Thank you. Oh, that's a great question. And it's just the other day, I found myself saying, well, what do I actually love more, energy or technology? And I think it's actually technology. I just love solar because it's a technology that could be used locally. Obviously, it's renewable. So what I would say is, we're in a really amazing time, as has already been said, with the technological advancements and the rapid pace of that advancement. So I've always been, as a quote unquote geriatric millennial, I've always been fascinated with the quick pace. I could never really do a job that commanded the same task of me every day. I always wanted something that was going to keep me on my toes, was going to challenge me to always learn something new. And with technology, you really have no choice in that matter. You've always got to keep updated. So what I would say, as far as the job market, there's just so many opportunities for transferable skills, so many opportunities for the application of traditional disciplines within technology, like energy and technology combined, right? And so don't ever get overwhelmed with the fact that things are moving so fast. It's actually an opportunity for somebody who's new to be an expert super fast, just because these technologies are advancing that quickly. And you've got to be a master of your craft. You always got to read the white papers. You got to network and make sure that you're staying on top of those advancements, and that's where your career will really lead you. Just pair the two. For instance, years ago in the beginning of my career, I would have folks that wanted to get into solar say, I'm a CPA now, I want to get into solar. Tell me what NABCEP class should I take? And I'm thinking, well, you're a CPA, so work on renewable and tax law. Like, energy is so applicable, technology is so applicable to everything that we do. Take maybe an existing skill set or something that you're interested in, and see how you can pair the two and create your own lane. But to answer that first question about the advancements, I just got to go back to distributed energy resources. Just very excited about a more equitable grid, because we're basically engaging more assets or nodes and more stakeholders. And just to say, we're really not going to be able to get that done without AI. And it's just so refreshing that we can design these new artificially intelligent systems to be more equitable. It definitely makes me excited for what I see as a more equitable future from a systemic baseline.
Yeah, fantastic. Dr. Isom, the same to you. I mean, how do you see the energy sector changing in the next 10 years? And what type of transition strategy do we need to get there? What type of skill sets should our audience be looking towards or seeking to really thrive in the future?
So I'll go back real quick to artificial intelligence. So AI is today a capability that, a computer capability that thinks and acts like humans. That's basically, if I were to try to sum it up, that's how we want, and that's how we think about AI. But it's not exactly there yet. It's so dependent on data. It's so dependent on the data that you provided. And there's a lot of time spent cultivating data and generating these data sets. And I think that's going to be different in the future. And so because of that, I believe that automation is going to be more effective. I think we'll see more automation. I think we definitely will see distributed energy resources operating better. I see more of the automation of the controls of the distributed energy resources operating better. I see the loads distributed better, but also the electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, I mean, it's just going to be the norm. It's not going to be like today where, you don't really want to get it because you honestly can't afford it. And if you can afford it, you just don't kind of like the look and feel. I think things will get better. And I mean, some of us like the look and feel, but some people don't. So we'll have more choices. And I do think that lives will extend longer because of the decarbonization. I think that there will be more decarbonization because of the work that we're doing around carbon sequestration and decarbonization and that focus on clean energy. So I think that ultimately we'll see, I hope so anyway, that because a lot of this is happening because of the emissions in the air and the environmental issues. And I believe that with what we're doing for clean energy and with optimizing the grid, there's microgrids, and then in the future, there's going to be more microgrids. We might call them distributed energy resources at that time, but there will be more microgrids. There will be other types of sources. Fusion is a big deal now. It's becoming more and more prevalent. So there will be other types of sources. We'll know how to use nuclear better. I mean, I'm a bit hopeful, but very practical, right? So, but I am hopeful because of what's happening now. I do think we'll save some lives with the things that we're doing, as long as we keep it up. And I believe that we will. Now, as far as the transition strategy, I just think we need to get ready. We need to get with the program, get ready. I think we need to, it should not be expensive for me to want to save energy. It should not be expensive. It should be an advantage for me. There should be incentives for me to want to do these things. And that, sometimes it's a little too expensive to go with some of these other technologies, which makes no sense, right? It should be it's kind of like it's expensive to eat healthy. It's more expensive to eat healthy than it is to not. This just doesn't make any sense. So I think in the future, things will flip. And part of that's me being hopeful, but I honestly believe so because of the things that we're doing. And the focus on climate change, I just think that that's where we're going to save some lives. I mean, we're just going to save some lives. That's just no doubt about it. When I think about education and training, I do believe that in addition to the artificial intelligence now chasing the data that it needs, as opposed to waiting for everybody else to compile and build these data sets, which we don't like it. We don't like it. It's like everybody complains about 85% of their time is spent curating data for the models, yada, yada, yada. We are in an automated phase in our lives, and it's really close to where we shouldn't have to do that. And when that happens, that is a skill that others can learn, how to program the algorithms, how to build the algorithms to do this. But then that's a whole realm of data science that I think will get cultivated. So I think the data science is here to stay, the data science skills, that's here to stay. And then being able to train the models now with this new way, where the models are going after the data and finding the data that it needs because it doesn't think this information is exactly representative, so it's going to go look elsewhere. Being able to operate in an environment like that and tie that to the mission needs, like this conversation is not about AI. This conversation is about energy. AI is a capability to help us get there. We'll start talking like this more and more. It won't be the technicians talking so technical and losing sight of what we're really trying to accomplish because we can't afford it. Lives are at stake, right? So that's kind of the way that I see the future. I hope I'm making sense, but that's the way that I see the future. And I definitely see the grid being more robust and more modern. The grid is going to be more modern with more renewable sources to support the grid for the various communities. And the last thing I'll say is I'm very positive that we are going to, and we are considering all the communities, the disadvantaged communities for sure.
Oh, that's great, Director Eisen. And just to follow on to that, so the folks for our audience here, many of them are high school students, or some of them are college students or college graduates. What advice would you give them in making this transition? Or preparing for it, I would say.
So I think that's for me, right? Your
yes.
question? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for the students, for the high schools and even K through 12, right? And for undergrads, grads, all of us, you want to align yourselves. Don't get so caught up in technology that you lose sight of society, right? And the social impact. So always stay focused on what the impacts are of what we're doing, what we're studying, what kind of change we can make, what is the impact of what we're doing? Why am I doing it? I encourage people to be risk takers. There's no room to let fear cause you to crumble. If you let fear cause you to crumble, you become oppressed. And that is not what we are here for. If we succumb to oppression, I don't think I need to say any more on that, right? Don't succumb to that. I always tell, and my daughter, I don't know if she's listening, but I always tell my daughter, and I always tell my team, take the challenges and the fear as it comes, and don't let it dwell. Turn that into opportunities to, leap ahead. Leap ahead. Be a trailblazer. When you're different, you're a trailblazer. Be glad that you're a trailblazer. That's how things happen, right? That's how we're coming up with all these renewable sources. And with the AI, with the Siri, with the Alexa, with the autonomous vehicles, with delivery of packages and aerial systems that are powered by AI. We're doing that because somebody said, what if? They did not succumb to someone who said, no, that's not, right? So that would be my encouragement to those of us and to the students and to the folks that are wondering how to address this and how they're going to adapt and really embrace the emerging capabilities. Really, really embrace it. That's already yours.
Thank you, Dr. Eisman. That was really great. Again, when I listen to these two leaders here, I get pumped up. I want to go out and I want to change the world, and I hope you all feel the same way. I mean, much of the advice that our two panelists have given us today really gets at the intersection of energy and technology, and in this case, AI being the predominant technology that we're discussing today. But it's not always us who help us to get to where we want to go. A lot of times it is the rules of the game. And speaking of the rules of the game, it's our policymakers who put those rules of the games out and we play by to make those transitions in the future. So as you sit where you are today, to assist our world in becoming a better place, becoming a better world, to become more equitable, what's the role of our policymakers, or what's the role of our leaders to help us transition? And what advice would we give them to help us make this world better? Better in the sense of more equitable, better in the sense of ethics in our data, better in the sense of just treating each other better and providing an opportunity for all to excel. So, Dana?
Sure. I think I'll approach this question in maybe a untraditional fashion, but definitely in the same vein. We're talking about the democratization of energy with, distributed energy resources, perhaps. And then I mentioned stakeholder capitalism. So just the opportunity for consumers and employees to really weigh in on leaders' decisions. And I'm primarily talking about business leader decisions. So, business is still always driven by a bottom line, but you might have heard the saying, vote with your dollars. So I'm taking it out of maybe the, elected official context, or, those that are making laws and by extension drawing policies up to say, you can have you can contribute your collective voice to the business community in that way. And we're already seeing that. Fortunately, part of the reason, if not most of the reason, that this stakeholder capitalism movement is moving at such a great clip is the Gen Z and millennial generation. And again, I don't mean to speak broadly, because from the context of historic oppression, this isn't all of us, but the massive transfer of wealth from the boomers to these subsequent generations, and those that wealth, having more of that input from different generations that say, actually, I really would prefer to divest from those fossil fuels, or I don't really like the way that, clothing manufacturer uses, slave labor somewhere. And so, voicing that in an active, respectful, and proactive way, engaging companies to say, as a matter of fact, within your climate strategy, what are you doing? The best way to get a good answer is just to ask a question. What are you doing about, a more equitable, a just transition, right? And you have a voice as a consumer. And so I would say that, from where I sit as an entrepreneur, within the business community, that is incredibly valuable. Keep doing that. It's working great. And that way we can start to build in, again, an equitable systems within the business community. And, again, I mentioned at the top of this convo, I am partial to businesses' role in this, not to say that we don't need all of these, stakeholders and diverse teams bringing that value. So not only vote with your dollars, but of course, go vote with your ballot as well. Get involved in your local elections I think particularly as I sit here in Georgia, we know the power that local elections can have to bringing, systemic change. And then you just got to have the tenacity and what's the word? Courage. I like the courage used, fortitude to just keep at it, because we're seeing history repeating itself in maybe not the best ways. But that's just the nature of it. So don't get discouraged. Just know you got to stay on the job. But then, treasure those little wins and that incremental positive change that I really see building, particularly over the past 3 years.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Dana. Director Isom.
Well, I like what Dana said, particularly around thinking about the consumer and knowing that we have a voice as consumers. And I always say I used to be in the private sector. Now I'm with the public sector. So private sector, it was about customers and consumers. Did they like the product? Are they going to come back for more? In the public sector, it's more impact. So that's why you hear me speak to impact a lot, because the value system is still highly ethical. Ethics should be everywhere, regardless of whether it's for profit or not. But in the public sector, the value system, and especially now, is more around the social impacts of the technologies that we're introducing. So is it going to help communities grow? And now it's more, don't just drop the technologies off, but make sure you're paying attention, because it could have a downstream effect to others, but also in the near future. So you have to now pay attention, I think more so than before, of technologies that have been deployed. It's no longer just drop it off and here you go. And that still goes back to the consumer, and the consumer has a voice and the consumer protectionisms. But I just want to say that from a value system perspective, we are paying and have to pay close attention to these technologies that are infused with, like AI and these models and algorithms. We have to pay close attention to how it is impacting folks now. And in fact, we have to build into the designs up front, what might these technologies do down the road? What might happen, right? So now we're starting to think about things a little bit more as far as, okay, here are the things that we know could happen. Now, what might be some harms? Because you have to. So you do have a voice, and the consumers are the ones that are going to force us to think about those things. You have to speak up. You have to speak up now more than ever. This is a social culture. Hardcore social technology, socio technologies. You have to speak up. So for policymakers, we need to embrace listening to the voice of the consumer and citizens. That's why I said all that, to kind of back up what Dana was saying. The other thing is the policy should support that, and they should include people in the policy making discussions. So let's say I'm on a board as a policy maker. That doesn't mean I should not reach out to Dana and her organization to get her perspective on things. We should do more of that. That's the only way we're going to know that we are actually delivering solutions, and energy is going to be as sustainable as we would like it to be, because we're listening to the voice of the consumer. And there's only a few ways to do so. One is to reach out to them and include them in the conversation and invite them to partake in the policy making decisions. So that is kind of my point. And then the very other point, the last point that I wanted to make on that is, these types of things, these policies are bipartisan. Get the politics out of it, right? We need to save lives, right? So get the politics out of it. It's bipartisan. We don't need that. We need decisions to get made that are fair, that are equitable, that are trustworthy, that are robust, that are sustainable. We need a sustainable energy grid. And to get a sustainable energy grid, get that stuff out, right? Get it out and let's do what we need to do. Come together and let's do what we need to do. And I think that gets in the way of sustainable policy making.
Oh, well said. Well said. I think we've come to our. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yes, sir.
So I think we've come to our question and answer session. So I think we have about 10 minutes. So how are we looking, Eric? Nina?
Oh, as of right now, we don't currently have any questions, and it looks like I don't currently have a screen. I don't know if you guys can see my face or not, but it went black on my end. So, okay, blackout. Look, it's a blackout during the energy session. That's hilarious. So we don't have any questions as of right now. We would like to encourage all of our viewers, our participants, to please add your questions, comments, thoughts in the Slido app so that we can address them during this session in real time. But as you're typing and as you're thinking about some of these amazing things that have come out of this, I was actually taking notes, and then I realized that you all couldn't see my notes. So I stopped taking them. I stopped taking them on the virtual side, and I just used pen and paper like old school. But I'm so I'm overwhelmed by the knowledge that both of you women have. And I would like to just ask you both if you're offering any internships or any opportunities for college students or even people who have jobs currently, or high school students, internships or some type of professional development opportunities where young people or even people that are, currently working can dive more into this new world. It's a new world I say new world in quotes because it's really not a new world, but it's being discussed more, it's being explored more. And Dana, you mentioned something. Oh, I hope I can find it. Or maybe it was you, director, when you said biases aren't always intentional. Like sometimes we have preconceived notions of how things should be. And so I ask you both, do you have opportunities for people who are interested in learning more? And if so, can you share how people can, how they can get in contact with you, your organization, to learn more? Over.
I can start, then I'll give it to Dana. So you can monitor the energy.gov website. There's always they're always looking. We are always looking, and if you monitor the site, there will be requests for. There's something called funding opportunity announcements that you can apply to. Lots of notifications out there that we're looking for clean energy innovators. Yes, you can do that. And then there are opportunities for internships. So all that's on the website out there. And I think what I'll do is, if I can find it before we dismiss, I'll drop some things in the chat here. But otherwise, feel free to reach out to me. But it is on our website as far as the internships that we offer. Some are for HBCUs and MSIs. Some are for, we have challenges going on. I have a challenge that I'm running right now for HBCUs and MSIs, and we're still cultivating some of the specifics, but there are always opportunities. I would encourage people to try to keep in touch and just monitor the AITO website. And that way you can stay in touch with me. So energy.gov, and then just go to the AITO, the artificial intelligence section.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And Dana, you're gonna have to voice over how others can get in touch with you as well, because
Sure.
Our viewers can't see. Thank you.
So the best place to reach me is LinkedIn. And that would be Dana Claire Redden. And if you just put LinkedIn and search me on that, and hopefully you all are using LinkedIn as a tool for your career. I certainly have benefited a lot from their ability to connect so many professionals that are focused on, some of the same business lines. So LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me. Solar Stewards does have an internship that's on a rolling basis. If you connect with me on LinkedIn and you're interested in that, I can send you details. I will say we're looking for problem solvers. That's the number one thing that we're looking for, because as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got these types of opportunities, problems that are in the process of being solved. There's no manual you can go and look up and say, oh, this is how it was done. We're actively looking for those innovators and problem solvers to join our team. And then I believe we're going to be hiring later on this year, if not this next quarter coming up. So just stay tuned and connected with me on LinkedIn. And you could also find Solar Stewards on LinkedIn as well. So I would love to connect with you all. I certainly love fresh mind and talent. We need that. It gives me life when I'm in this career, bumping up against barriers to get the fresh perspective and energy from, diverse people all over the globe. I think one takeaway from this is everyone's got a very important role to play. You can have 1 year of experience, you can have 50 years of experience, you could be 18, you could be 75, you could live in the United States, you could live in Cape Town. Everybody's got a role to play in this amazing energy transition.
That's phenomenal. And look, the lights came back on my side. Let me ask you, Bo, this is a really funny question. Do you have any energy efficient devices like a car or a scooter, or do you all promote them? How do you feel about them? This is just a random question. It's a new thing. So how do you ladies feel about promoting energy efficient cars or driving them or testing them, and then the AI car, the vehicle that is operated by the car?
Yeah.
How do you ladies feel about that?
I have the feature in my car that it can actually drive itself, but I don't do it. And it can park itself. Those are the features in the cars now, but it's gonna get even, there are others where it just literally just drives all over the place. And I have that feature, but I'm a responsible, trustworthy person. So, yeah.
I have solar on my house, quite proud of it.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, well, gotta, practice what I preach. It's a small system. So, got in where I could fit in there. But I certainly am looking at getting an EV for my next car. One thing I want to perhaps tie in, the leader of these technologies, the company that's going to lead is going to, do so in an equitable way. You've got to have a company that respects all of its stakeholders and employees. There's going to be no tolerance for discrimination in your workforce, unequal pay. You can wait till you get sued by a state, or and that hits your bottom line, or you can just do the right thing and realize that in your profits and engagement. So I'll say that about EVs, and I'm really excited that more options are coming out. And I would really like I love the EV trucks. Might want to do something like that.
Okay, I like the Tesla. I do love the Tesla. The Tesla don't love my pockets right now.
hey, folks, we've got about 2 minutes left. I'd like to give Dana and then end it with Director last closing comments, please. Dana.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Well, I just want to say thank you all for tuning in. You were in the right place for where you want to go. And there's just so much opportunity. And just as Director Isom said, you can, and it's inevitable, you'll feel that fear, but just know that, that's natural and you can push through it. And, many people have forged a path. You can look forward to that, as far as inspiration. But I just encourage everyone to really, be be a leader, and don't be afraid to do something novel, something new, and something equitable.
Director Ison.
Yeah, I have the similar comments. I think that this is the day and time that everything is possible. I think that there's no career that is not worth it. So if you're studying, whatever you're studying, it's worth it. Just keep at it. There are plenty of opportunities to take the things that we're studying in school and whatever trade craft that you're studying and put it to use because of the versatility of society and the capabilities that are needed to progress. So keep going, keep at it. And again, turn any fear into see them as challenges and see them as opportunities to leap forward.
That is beautiful. Sir, you have 30 seconds. Would you like to say anything else prior to my official thank you?
No, I just want to say, Director Ison, Dana, Redden, ladies, Nina, thank you all for another enjoyable session, very informative, and it was a pleasure to host you all today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure. Again, just to mimic Colonel Trumble's remarks, I am so grateful to be amongst the greats, African-American women who are making a difference in this environment, this energy environment. I would also ask if you please rate this panel, rate this session, and please also reach out to these women. They've given you their contacts. Utilize this. This is the whole purpose of BEYA, is to make connections, network, build on things that you would like to have happen for your future. You have absolutely no idea where these two women could potentially take you. So without further ado, I would just like to thank you on behalf of myself, on behalf of the BEYA Stars and Stripes committee and the entire team. Colonel Trumbull, we are so grateful. Thank you so much for listening to us this afternoon. And again, I would encourage you to reach out, reach back, and stay informed. Over and out.
Thank you all.